If you look at the Hollywood representation of countries like Iran, it really goes back to the origin of cinematic Hollywood Orientalism. But in this case, it dovetails with a kind of a bourgeois feminism uh, period that the woman is entrapped in a terrible abusive marriage. But in addition to that, it actually in a different, hostile, weird, unusual, incomprehensible environment. So the drama unfolds in the genre of fantasy, rescue fantasy, that this mother now gets to save her child. So anybody, including an Iranian mother, will identify with that genre, the way that the trope works. The film is actually very, very well done. Sally Field, in particular, she's an exquisite actress, very good actor. And as I said, the question of rescue, the idea of a mother who is afraid for her child, forget about that, it's about the political dimension of it. Just concentrate on its cinematic and dramatic dimensions. Is very effectively done. Very good acting, very good camera work, very good mise en scène, etc. The Iran scenes are really cliche, but that's a different issue. So if, as a result, if this was not given this added, unnecessary, really diabolic political dimension intentionally, both by the author and the filmmaker and the marketing strategy of where to go and what to appeal to, there are many good qualities to the film itself that you can see. But the paradox becomes, the more effective the film is, the more dangerous becomes its diabolical politicization context. The major traumatic experience is, of course, the American hostage crisis of 1977-79, when Iran becomes this epicenter of diabolic anti-Americanism, death to America, and this and that. In the making of which image, of course, television, national television, ABC, CBS, NBC, made a major, major contribution. They began to concentrate on bearded, angry, death to America, close-up, another close-up, third close-up, medium shot, put it together, put it in the evening news. It was that image that was still paramount in the mind of Americans, and by extension Europeans. Frozen in time, unrelated to the unfolding history of the world, that then, Not Without My Daughter, began to cater to. The key question is, how is it that the personal becomes political? You look at the story of Not Without My Daughter. What is the story? Husband and wife marry, they move to another country, Jamaica, Mexico, I don't know, some other country. The marriage doesn't last, they don't like each other, they discover this marriage was a mistake. She doesn't like the environment, whatever reason, and goes through a nasty divorce. It happens. Husband could be Iranian, the husband could be American, wife could be Iranian, wife could be American. It's a personal thing. I mean, marriage happens. Some marriages last beautifully, some collapse miserably. It's a personal story. But when you put it into a narrative that is not about this diabolic husband that you choose to marry and have a child with, but assumes national characteristics, religious characteristics, cultural characteristics, civilizational characteristics, that it is not this particular diabolic man who's a bad husband, and I hate him and I divorced him. He wanted, I mean, we had a custody battle. I mean, are you kidding me? In New York, we don't have a custody issues. We have, every day there are custody issues. But it's between one man and a woman. I don't know which one of them is at fault. Maybe both of them are at fault. But you don't write a book about the diabolic nature of American society. or men are like this and women are like that. No, it's just a marriage that didn't work out. It is, as a result, the language. Betty Mahmoudi knew what she's doing. They realized that this personal story has tremendous political implications, and that politicization of the personal has huge commercial implications. And by banking and investing on the political realities of the time, the hostage crisis, the demonization of Iranians, etc., etc., and in a market that is trapped, is a monolingual market, is a market subject to massive commercial propaganda about the significance of a book. Absence of critical thinking. Nobody says, what is this? You have a custody battle between a husband and wife? Okay, sorry, go, resolve it. Why put it in this language, in this context? That is a publishing industry, not just a person. A publishing industry that realizes the commercial benefits and commercial gains of massively over politicizing an aspect about Iran and Islam and this and that, and taking advantage of it and laughing all the way to the bank. Not Without My Daughters is one of the earliest manifestations, earliest cinematic cases that we have a very successful and, as a result, sinister fusion of a number of binaries. Some of them legitimate, some of them illegitimate, but put together, gathered in a way that they are indistinguishable. Legitimate, a mother married to an abusive husband wants to save her child and is committed to that act. That's very admirable. Can happen anywhere. But then from there you begin to uplift to political issues. This is Iran, this is United States. So anything that happens to me, I am representing US, and anything that is endangering my well-being and my daughter's well-being is Iranian. Uplift to religious. I am a Christian and this is Muslim. So this becomes a religious confrontation. The fact that from within any one of these categories, you can have any number of agitations. You can be a good Muslim, you could be a bad Muslim. You could be a good Christian, you could be a bad Christian. You could be a good mother or a bad mother. You could be a good husband or a bad. You see, any one of them, if you look at them, you can break them down into any number of possibilities. But the film is narrated with such generic and predestinarian and cosmic battle between good and evil. Good is on this side, evil on that side. Everything on this side is good, everything on that side is diabolic. And as a result, you're by the way the camera works, by the way the narrative works, by the way the sequences are put together, etc., etc., you're going for good, rooting for good and against evil. Cinema, as I said earlier, is both a miraculous art form, but also very pernicious. In the sense that we cross-identify with characters. And once we cross-identify with characters, their fate becomes our fate. That aspect of cinema is in every single shot and sequence. I can't choose. Every single shot and every sequence of the film, Not Without My Daughter, banks on that emotive universe. Is from the POV of a mother committed, and she in effect is the omniscient narrator. She generates and sustains emotion. She is the hero. And as I said, the paradox, the way that it works, every mother who actually devotes her life and endangers her well-being in order to save her daughter is praiseworthy, is good, is to be celebrated. But that gut feeling, that emotion is abused in this film. The way the film is set up, the only way for an Iranian to be a good person is to stop being Iranian. The only way that a Muslim can be a good person is to stop being a Muslim. You cannot be a Muslim and a good person. You cannot be a good person and an Iranian. So if you're born an Iranian Muslim, about which you had no choice, but you actually identify with the mother and her cause and her attempt to save her child, ipso facto, at the moment that you have made that concession or consideration, that admission that yes, I identify with your cause, you cease to be a Muslim, you cease to be an Iranian. So it generates an existential crisis for a human being. If you want to be a good person, go and become, dye your hair blonde, put a blue contact lens on, do a nose job, whatever it is. Stop being who you are. That's the only way that you have a salvation. Because Hollywood becomes the modality of making the white Christian the norm. Everything else is abnormal. You distance yourself from your abnormality. The closer you come to the image that Hollywood keeps producing of a white, male mostly, normative character, the closer that you are to that character, the more normal you are. My sympathy, obviously, is with those critics who realize that this is a shallow and propaganda-ridden project. But the charge of racism is, I would call it, xenophobic, Islamophobic, and full of bigotry. That is what the film is, the result of the film, and the purposeful manner in which it is staged was and remains. However, I think that those criticisms were done in a kind of a knee-jerk reaction, legitimate knee-jerk reaction for seeing that they were doing what they were doing. But in a way, they were giving more credit to it than it deserved, more attention to it than it deserved, more publicity to it than it deserved. So it became a kind of a vicious circle. If you liked it, you propagated it. If you disliked it, you propagated it. And soon, Not Without My Daughter stopped being a film and became a phenomenon. That courses were taught in universities and communities were screening it, and they were showing it, the heroic effort of a mother to think, and who is to say anything against the heroic effort that there are many mothers. I mean, this is the critical aspect of it, that there is a legitimate concern about an abusive husband. There is a legitimate concern about misogyny. There is a legitimate concern about custody battles that many mothers go through in order to keep their children. Because there are these legitimate factors, the film becomes even more atrocious, that abuses that factual evidence, factual reality, for illegitimate purposes of demonization in order to bank on that demonization for commercial purposes. As a film, Not Without My Daughter is entirely insignificant, nothing memorable. It did huge damage to a generation of Iranians, particularly as refugees, as exile in Europe, in the United States, that they were put in a position in their schools, in their place of work, with their friends, etc., that they had to explain it. But as a phenomenon, Not Without My Daughter is in the same line of systematic propaganda, commercially successful demonization of other people, any other people is a prototype of demonization. In this particular case is the demonization of Iranians and to some extent Muslims. At the core of it, what remains, what is important about this example is not to laser beam and concentrate on Iran and the specific demonization of the people, but to link it to a larger manner in which othering takes place and diabolic and demonic fictions, phantasms are created in order to make white supremacy normative. So humanity at large, anywhere around the globe, not just Iran, you have to put Iran in a larger context, Asia, Africa, Latin America, for them to be considered even human, they have to approximate to being white. And because they cannot be white, so the absolute superiority of the white remains constant, becomes normative, becomes, this is what Malcolm X was doing in jail, looking at the dictionary, becomes alphabetical, becomes etymological to the very language that we are supposed to use in order to say, I am a human being.